Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Mr. Vadovic. We are really lucky today to have a wonderful author who has donated some of her time to come and talk with us. We're reading your book right now, The False Prince. It's an amazing book. Our kids really love it. We're doing a lot of collaboration and a lot of talking. And so I want to introduce Miss Jennifer Nielsen, who's coming to us live from Utah. And we're going to start things with Miss Ennett's class. If you guys have your questions ready to go, Miss Ennett, we will listen to you guys, and then we'll open it up to Mr. Amato. And then after that, it'll be my class. We'll have a chance to talk, and we'll keep your mic open the entire time. Okay, Jennifer?
All right, thank you.
All right, here we go. So, Miss Ennett.
Okay, my first question is, when you write, do you feel similar emotions that the reader might feel? So, for example, when a main character dies, do you feel sad like the reader might feel?
Yeah, actually, that's a cool question. I come from a theater background, so I'm actually trained as an actor more than I'm trained as a writer. And so I kind of approach my writing from a theater perspective, where when I'm writing, I'm literally in my mind in that scene. And so I go through all of those emotions, and not just for the hero, but I'll jump into all of the characters' heads. So yeah, you know, if whatever those characters are feeling, yeah, I've gone through all of that emotionally. Thank you.
Get down a little bit, Joseph. Get down a little bit so you can see your head.
Hi.
I don't know if we're up yet. Can she hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
My question is, what is it about S.E. Hinton's book, The Outsiders, that inspired you to write The False Prince?
Oh, that's cool. You know, I don't know that Outsiders influenced me directly for The False Prince, but it inspired me to write, because the thing is, when I was a kid, I had never met a real author. I'd never seen a real author. So to me, authors weren't just real everyday people, because I was like this ordinary kid. And what S.E. Hinton did for me is I found out that she was writing The Outsiders when she was a teenager. And all of a sudden, the idea of being an ordinary, regular kid and being an author became real. So S.E. Hinton, it wasn't necessarily False Prince. She was the one who made me think I could become a writer. Thank you.
Hi. In a previous interview, you mentioned that your first few books were terrible. How, as a writer, and how, as a writer, do you have handled rejection?
Oh, rejection is terrible. It feels like a bee sting is a really good way to describe it, where it's just like, ow, right? It's not fun. And in fact, there's a lot of writers who will go so far to avoid it. So they'll say, you know what, I'm not going to submit my work at all. I'm not going to test it. I'm not going to have other people read it. I'm just going to take this story that I wrote and I'm going to put it in a box in a drawer. And that's easier than them to rejection. Even though I don't like it and it hurts, it's kind of like you try out for the team and you don't you don't make it, that sort of feeling. Even though I don't like it, it is super necessary for every author to go through that phase. Because as writers, it's a very up and down career. You know, you get a good review, you get a bad review. You get good sales numbers, you get bad sales numbers. Your editor likes what you're doing, your editor hates what you're doing. And that's just part of the career. So because I went through all of those rejections, and guys, I'm talking like hundreds of rejections. And because I went through those, it just kind of thickened my skin. And so it's okay now. Like, I can deal with a bad review, I can deal with a bad sales number, I can deal if my editor says this is terrible, because I went through those rejections. So even though it's not fun, it is super important to go through that phase of failure. Thank you.
When you think of an idea for a new novel, do you consult your children or anyone else about the idea?
Sometimes I do, and it's funny, it's a very timely question. I just got approved yesterday by my editor for a new story idea, and it was like finally, because we've been working on this for months of coming up with this idea. And so I'd have like 9 or 10 ideas, and I'd take them to my family and I'd be like, guys, do any of these stand out to you? And sometimes they're like, oh, Mom, you've got to do this. And sometimes they're like, go away. This is boring. And so they can be very, very helpful. But at the same time, I understand that the idea has to happen inside me. It has to be something I'm passionate about. And so even if like my kids love it, if the passion isn't there for me, I know it's not the right idea. But yeah, they are awesome that way. Thank you.
Okay, Jordan. Hey, hello.
Hello. My question is, many of the characters in your book are very complex and have many characteristics. How do you come up with the ideas to make these characters so complex?
Oh, I love that. It comes back to the same idea as theater. Because to me, theater, the whole point of theater, right, is you take this description that's on a page and you have to build a character on it that you can portray on stage. And I kind of do the same thing. So when I'm coming up with my character, so if it's Sage and I'm working on Sage as a character, I'm going to spend a lot of time just letting him be in my head. Like before I've ever written a word of dialogue for him, I'm going to let him live in my head for a while. And I'll be driving down the road and a song will come on the radio and I'll think, okay, is this a song Sage would like? Or would Sage hate this? Or I'll be talking in conversation with somebody, and in my mind, I'll put Sage there. And, how would he stand? How would he act? What would he be thinking about this? And it's kind of crazy, but I'm kind of crazy. I'm cool with that. And so it's kind of how I build characters. Like, to me, I have to make them real in my head, and then I'm ready to write them. Thank you.
When you're writing a book, at what point can you say that the story is actually complete?
Never. Never. It's one of the things that kills so many writers, because there comes a point when your editor says, no, you have to send this as a final manuscript. And we just sit there, we're like frozen lumps of quivering insecurity, because we're like, as soon as I hit send, that's it. Like, no more revisions, no more changes. I just hit send. And it's terrible. My standard is I'm done when I can't make it any better, only different. All right? So my rewrite is done. If I go through that manuscript and I'm like, there's nothing I can do to make this any better, then I'm done. But who knows when that ever happens. Thank you.
As a class, we're enjoying reading the book, The False Prince. How does it make you feel when young people are enjoying your book?
Oh my gosh, I have to tell you, it is the craziest thing. It is for me one of the most rewarding parts of being an author, because when you start, it's just an idea in your head. That's all it is just, hey, what if there's some kid who's forced to impersonate royalty? That's it. It's just some idea like that. And then it starts to work inside me, and it starts to grow, and I get really excited about it, and then I'm like obsessive thinking about it, and then I'm writing, and I can't even sleep because all I want to do is write this story. And that's all happening inside of me, and nobody on the outside knows all of that is happening. And then all of a sudden, it gets published, and kids start to have that same experience. And so kids open up the book and they're like, oh, this is about a kid who's forced to impersonate royalty. And then kids start to go through that excitement, and they start to experience all those emotions I already went through. And that is an amazing, amazing thing, to think that you could create something that somebody else could love is absolutely amazing. It's one of the best parts of my job.
There you go, you're ready.
Hello. I can see you're a very creative artist. What makes you come up with those crazy twists that you have at the end of the book?
All right, here's what I do for twists. And this is important because a lot of kids want to write twist ending stories because we all love them. Here's what I do. So I will make a paper, just a blank sheet of paper, and in the very center of the paper, I'm going to write the main like hook of my story. So boy impersonates royalty, all right? And then I'll draw lines coming out from that center of the paper, and I'm going to just ask questions, only questions. So I might ask questions like, who is he, this boy who's being forced to impersonate royalty? Why is he doing it? What is his secret? And I'm going to ask all of these questions. And then I force myself to come up with at least 5 answers for every question I ask. I have to get 5. So like answers 1 and 2, totally predictable. Like anybody's dog could come up with answers 1 and 2. So they're super, super obvious. Answers 3 and 4 are really, really interesting because now I really have to think differently to get 3 and 4. Answer number 5 is like so far in left field, it's like, and then aliens landed, right? It's insane. But it forces me to think differently because I've got to get all 5 for every single question I ask. Somewhere in those 5 is where I start to get my twists. Thank you.
Once you've made the final keystroke to finish a draft, what comes next? What is the editing process like?
Okay, so here's what happens. I will write my first draft, and it's terrible because everybody's first draft is terrible. So I will edit and edit and edit until my brain starts to bleed. And then at that point, I send it to my editor. And then she sits on it for an enormously long time, during which I develop bad habits like chewing my nails because I'm waiting for her to respond. And finally, she comes back to me with what's called an editorial letter. And it is roughly as long as the Bible, all right? And it is just full of changes I need to make. So it is like, you know, change this, add this doesn't make any sense, get rid of this character, whatever it is that she thinks is going to make it better. And then I will go through that letter, and I will make all of those changes that I feel like need to be made, and then I go send it back to her, and we'll go back and forth until she says, okay, I'm happy with this. At that point, it goes into copy editing, and that's like little word choices, like do you want the or and that's when I start to rip my hair out. And then after copy editing, it goes to proofreading, which makes sure, you know, if it's a 75,000 word manuscript, there's not one misplaced comma, not one misspelled word, no weird, you know, problems in the plot. And so then it goes through, you know, all that proofreading. After proofreading, it heads to print. And that's, you know, there's no going back after proofreading. That's my final send. Thank you.
Can you personally relate to any books you have written before? For example, you started your profession by writing a story about a girl who got trapped in her daydreams. Have you ever daydreamed like her?
Oh yeah, no, that story was totally me. I mean, it's like she obviously was. But yeah, no, it's that story was absolutely me in the role. Because I was 6th grade, and you know, when you're young, most young writers are writing about themselves. It's just part of the process. As I've gotten older, I don't necessarily write about me, but I write about emotions I understand, or emotions that I really enjoy feeling. Like I love writing dangerous stories, and I think it's because there's a part of me, because I was kind of an adrenaline junkie as a teenager, which is very dangerous. None of you do that. But I lived a little more dangerous than I ought to have, and I think that emotion comes out in Sage. So even though Sage is very different from me. Thank you.
Okay, dude.
Okay. Do you have a bank of character names? Because I was impressed with the interesting and original names in the false prints.
No, it's naming is funny. Some of the names are for a reason. Jaron is a person I actually used to know many, many years ago. He was a teenager, and he was just this awesome kid. And I used to think if we had royalty in this country, he would have been a prince. And so when it came time to name my prince, it just always was going to be Jaron. Connor was chosen because he's a con man, and I really liked con, that play in words. Some of the names are the same way your mom and dad named you. All right, they saw you and they had some names in mind, but once they saw you, maybe they looked at baby name books or whatever, they knew the name was right for you. And for my characters, I know when I have the right name for them. Some of the names are just made up. It's just like all the place names in the book. It's just me putting sounds together until I like the name of the word. So Carthia, it's just totally made up from me just putting sounds together. So there's not really any magic to it. It's just what I do when I haven't had enough sleep. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Once you have found a successful formula for a novel or trilogy, how difficult is it to write something that doesn't fall into the same formula?
Wow. Wow, that is a fabulous question. It is really scary. It's really scary because, like with False Prince, you know, I wrote books 1, 2, and 3. They were all of them very successful. They've all had really great reviews. I will get emails almost every single day from somebody, just please write another book of the series, please do another, and that's awesome. I love that. But at the same time, you know, I told my editor, I said, I can't write Sage for the rest of my life because I'm not going to limit myself in one way. And so, you know, I've got this new book coming out in a couple of weeks, Mark of the Thief, which is a totally different character. It's a dangerous sort of book, but it's very different because it's got magic and all of these different elements. It's really scary. And then next fall, I'm releasing a book that's not even a fantasy. It's a historical dealing with the Berlin Wall in Germany. And totally different, very, very different character. It's a girl this time, hero, for this fall. And so it's scary, but if we're artists, and all of those of you who are listening who are artists, you sing, you act, you play music, you draw, if you are an artist, you cannot just keep recreating one thing because then you're just a one-trick pony. You want to always be challenging and pushing yourself, even if you might fail and even if it just scares you. So I'm really nervous, but that's a good thing.
All right, so as a writer, has anyone inspired you to create the characters in your books? For example, does Sage represent anyone you have ever met in your life?
Sage is very much, he's just his own character because I pity any real mother who would have to raise him. But there is one trait of Sage's I did borrow from a real person. I used to be a high school debate coach. And on weekends, we'd get on a bus and go to debate tournaments. Well, one of my students was a kid named Ken. And Ken was popular and brilliant and just an all-around great kid. But Ken was a thief. And what would happen is we would get on the bus and he would go up to the bus driver and ask to shake the bus driver's hand and just, oh, thank you for driving us to the tournament today. And while he's shaking the bus driver's hand, he's stealing the guy's watch right off his wrist. And then Ken would take that watch to the back of the bus, he'd hold it for the whole ride, and at the end of the ride, he'd bring the watch forward and say to the bus driver, I found this on the floor of the bus. Could this be yours? And the bus driver's like, oh, it's so good to have honest young men these days. When Ken was the guy who had stolen it. And he did that almost every week to whatever poor bus driver we had. And so even though like Sage is his own character, I always thought of Ken when I was doing Sage's thief scenes. Thank you.
Hey, Julie.
When you begin writing a book, where do you get the inspiration for your setting?
I rarely start with setting just because to me, I can't even say that. I kind of do start with setting sometimes. I mean, Mark of the Thief, so I'm going to show you guys just so when I talk about it. That's this book right here. That's my new one coming out in a couple of weeks. This one is Ancient Rome, and I absolutely knew it was going to be Ancient Rome, so I started there. When it was the Berlin Wall, I knew it was going to be Berlin Wall, so I started there. So sometimes I start with the setting because the setting is going to give me the problem for the story. But with False Prince, you know, the setting was one of the last things to come. I knew there was going to be a boy forced to impersonate royalty, but then choosing the environment in which this story was going to happen, I build it so that the environment both helps my character and harms him. I want him to have to work within it. As writers, you have to choose your settings very carefully because the setting will define your characters. Just as you are defined by the place where you live, I'm defined by the place where I live. Thank you.
If you could meet one of the characters in The False Prince, what would it be and why?
Oh, goodness. Well, not Connor. I don't want to meet Connor. He's horrid. You know, I'd really like to meet Mott. I would really like to meet him. Mott, to me, is the perfect definition of what a friend should be. And, you know, as he and Sage come to a friendship and then what happens to them in the rest of the series, I would really love to have a conversation with Mott and to see the story from his perspective, because Sage just infuriates him, but he loves Sage despite all that. And I just think that would be an interesting conversation.
If I could just ask a real quick follow-up question. You said mentioning writing from another character's perspective. Is that something that you would consider doing?
Oh, it's always open. I don't think it would work really well in The False Prince, just because Sage is such a strong personality. He tends to take over any scene he's in, and so because it's just who he is, and so all of the energy in a scene always grows toward him and around him, because I think that's, if he were real, that's the kind of person he would be. If I were to write from Imogen's perspective, I feel like Sage would just suck everything back to him. And so I don't think it would be a strong story. But I think for me personally, it would be a fascinating writing exercise just to expand me as a writer, but just probably not for publishing.
What do you consider to be your biggest accomplishment and why?
My biggest accomplishment is my kids. Has nothing to do with writing at all. You know, they are my number one, and so I think that's really cool. If you're talking about specifically within the writing field, my biggest accomplishment, it was getting published at all. Really, it's a very difficult thing, and the odds are so against you, and there are so many writers who quit when it gets hard. And I'm really, really proud of myself that when it was hard and I felt like giving up, I'm really proud that I didn't, because I wouldn't be here if I had made the decision to quit at any point before this. Thank you.
Sorry, we ended up with someone who's rolling up their rim right now.
Okay, got it.
What keeps you writing? Why don't you get bored and walk away? You can't answer because I love writing.
You love writing?
The question was, what keeps you writing? And you can't say that you love writing.
Okay. Oh, I cannot say it keeps me writing because I love writing. It's because I'm not a quitter by nature, and it drives, I think I'm a little OCD. No, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm totally OCD. And so to me, having an unfinished manuscript, that just drives me insane. It would be like staring at an unfinished jigsaw puzzle and walking by it and not trying to fit a piece in. I'm not good at parts. I'm good at, I think I'm OCD enough. I need to make things whole. And so like when I'm in the writing phase, like that first draft phase, I am just so obsessive about getting that first draft together because it drives me crazy to have it undone. And part of it is just a natural curiosity. I want to see what happens, just as if you're reading a book and you're really into it, you want to see what happens. Writing it, I want to see everything come together. But I think it's, aside from the fact that I really do love writing, it's just the OCD in me. I gotta finish.
Alright. Why did you decide to make the protagonist Sage such a deceitful character?
Where are you at in the book? Have you finished the book? Oh, sorry, we'll have to unmute. Yes, you finished it? All right. If you...
Sorry, before you answer, some of us have and some of us have not.
Good to know. Okay, I'm not going to spoil. A girl... Okay, let me think how to do this without spoiling. Reread the book. Reread the book and make a note every single time he outright lies. It will not be as often as you think. He makes a point even in book 2 that, or maybe book 3, I don't remember. I think it's book 2. He makes the point that it's not that he lies, it's that everybody is compelled to misunderstand everything he says. So he is very good at double talk. Sorry, everything's muted, so somebody's going to talk. I just don't know who yet.
Yeah,
there we go.
How have your personal experience changed your writing?
My personal experiences, they do. I think you'll talk to a lot of writers who will talk about they're really just writing out different elements of their own experiences. I think for me, so I grew up, I had to be pretty independent growing up because my mom was a single mom and we had very little money. And so she was working a lot just to kind of earn enough money for our family. And because of that, I had to be very much just independent, doing my own thing. And I think you can see those themes come out a lot. Also, just I'm a pretty intense personality. Like, I don't do anything without really feeling passionate about it. And I think you see that come out in my writing. So you definitely see things I care about will always emerge as themes. You'll see a lot of themes of freedom in my writing, and that's because that's a very central focus for my life, about being able to do the things I wish to do and not feel that somebody is holding me back from that. And so you'll see that come out a lot.
When writing your books, do you approach your writing with an overall lesson in mind?
No, actually, I try to avoid that because I think as kids, like I know when I was young, I hated reading like moral stories, right? I hated stories that totally existed just to teach me a lesson about how to be a better person. Those just were not my books. And I think young people, I mean, don't you guys kind of feel like you get lectured to enough? Right? Like your mom's down on you. My grandma never said a word to me without a lecture involved. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to be that author. Like if you read my stuff and you want to pull a theme out of it, that's awesome. But I'm not writing with the intention of teaching you a lesson because I think you're smart enough to pull your own lessons from the book. I don't need to just shove them at your face.
No, Mr. Vaughn.
That's us.
Oh, our turn.
Oh, yay.
After writing several books, do you find it difficult to create new and exciting characters for each novel?
No, because the characters, they're not, they become their own person to me, and almost like they come alive to me. And so it's almost like meeting a new friend. You're never going to have, like, say, you know, I'm really just not interested in any more friends. I've met enough people now, right? That never happens. You're always like, oh, there's new people, and everybody has things that are different and unique about them. And every one of my characters has things that are different and unique about them. And I love every relationship. The reality is, if I live to be 100 years old, if I'm writing till I'm 100 years old, I will always have more stories and more characters in my head than I will ever be able to write. So I will not outlive all my ideas. And that's a cool thing.
Okay. Have there been any roadblocks or obstacles that you went through while writing? For example, coming up with ideas or titles. How have you overcome them?
Okay, great. Yeah, every story is going to have its unique set of challenges. Every single one will. Writer's block is a real thing. When I was writing Mark of the Thief Book 1, I just hit a giant wall where I was like, I have no idea what is supposed to happen next with this story. And the way I get back past that is I back up, and I might back up one chapter, I might back up 4 or 5 chapters, and try to figure out where my story went wrong. Because if you hit a wall, your story doesn't go wrong at the wall. Your story went wrong back here. And then you're just pushing through it and pushing through it. It's like walking through mud. And so when you hit the wall, you have to go back to here and say, okay, I made a wrong choice, or I made a weak choice here. I need to fix this so that I don't hit the wall here. I hit that. I hit title suggestions for Night Divided. That's the book coming out this fall. I went through 50 different suggestions. No, over 50. It was 53 suggestions with my editor, where she's like, I don't like any of those titles, send me more. So I'd send her like another 20 more titles. No, I don't like those, send me more. And it's like, look, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet. At some point, I'm going to run out of title suggestions. But we just kept going and kept going for that. With the title suggestions, I sent all 53 in one document to my editor. And I said, this is everything I've sent you. Re-look at this, please. And I know you will find the right title there. And she looked at all 53 and she's like, oh, I like this one, which was like idea number 8 that I had sent her. But we had to go through 47 whatever more till she found the one that she liked. So yeah, roadblocks always happen. But you know what? That's every career. Every career hits them. And you just say, but I'm going to push through because I'm not going to quit on something as stupid as a title. I'm not going to quit on something as stupid as writer's block. And you just keep going.
We've researched a bit about how difficult it was to get your first book published. Can you describe the process of finding an agent or publisher?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you write your final manuscript, and you have to make it. When you're trying to get published, the odds are so stacked against you. If the day that I send a query in to an agent, that same agent is receiving 30 or 40 other queries just that day. And I have to say, okay, why will you choose mine? Why will you choose mine? Which means I can't be as good as everything else that's out there. I have to be a little bit better than everything else that's out there. And that's why you get so many rejections as you're trying to break in, because you're pushing through this very tiny door and you're wanting to be the next one through the door, but it's a very tiny door and there's a mob trying to get through it. So you have to write something that the agent is going to want to see. And if the agent likes it, then hopefully the agent will agree to sign you. And once they sign you, then the agent starts submitting your work to publishers. And then you're trying to fit through that door again and be the one chosen for publication from all those other authors who have agents. And so it's kind of a tough process. Luck absolutely plays a role. Every writer I know will tell you the point at which they got lucky. And so it's not about, if you know luck is going to play a role, though, you can't just sit back. You have to say, I want to be the right person. I want to be ready for when my lucky moment hits. And timing those things together so that you're the right person when the lucky moment hits. Those are the people who get published.
I apologize for cutting in again, but I have a follow-up question to that. What's your thoughts on self-publishing with regards to technology and the availability of being able to self-publish now?
Okay, this is my feeling on self-publishing. I think there are certain reasons why a person should self-publish. Here's the reasons you should self-publish. Number one, if you just want to distribute your book to a very few people. So if you're like, you know what, I want to put something up there that my family, my friends, and friends of my friends can download, but I don't care if it's going to get read by a lot of people. I just want to put something up for these people, you know, this few number of people. Great, you should self-publish. You should self-publish if you want total control of the system. If you say, you know what, I don't want to have to submit 53 titles to an editor, or I want to have total creative control. I love doing my own cover. I want to do the marketing. If you want total control, you should self-publish. The third reason you should self-publish is if you have a book that is important to write, but that is not for a wide audience. For example, if you write a book that's like mineral rights in the Wasatch Mountains, okay? There's not many people who want to read about mineral rights in the Wasatch Mountains, but maybe it should be published so that some people can get that information. All of these are great reasons to publish. Here's the reason you should not self-publish. You should not self-publish if you're afraid of rejection, all right? Or if you're tired of rejection. Because if you're just tired of getting rejection, there's still a reason. The reason I was rejected so many times is I wasn't good enough yet as an author. Well, that doesn't mean I should just do it on my own. It means I should get better. And I should not self-publish if I'm afraid of rejection, because as I told you earlier, you need rejection to get tougher if you're going to last in this industry. And if I just try to bypass it, then when I get that bad review, I won't know how to deal with it because I never went through that rejection sting. So I don't believe you publish to avoid rejection. I do believe you publish if you have positive reasons for it, but not to avoid the negative.
Okay.
This class loved reading your book, and we look forward to reading more of your book. Thank you for taking time out of your day. We have no more questions, but we will continue with we will continue to listen to this conversation.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Hello. If you were to relate yourself to any of the three characters in The False Prince, like Sage, Rodin, and Tobias, who would you say best represents you and why?
You know, there's a little of me in every character because every character came from me. I mean, even Connor, even though I'm not some murderous twit, I still understand the ambition that he feels. And so there's a little of me in every character. I think most like me is probably Imogen. I think I'm more like her than anybody else, but she and I have our differences as well. But I think I understand her quite a bit.
Okay, sorry. I have a question with regards to your editing process. When you're finished writing your first draft, how long do you take as a break before you go into actually re-editing your book? Or do you take a break at all? Or do you just get right back into it, and then do you just wait until that book is finished before starting another one?
No, I'm actually always working on multiple projects at the same time right now, and these are all open on my desktop, so you can just imagine how my desktop looks. I just approved an idea yesterday, so I'm starting to brainstorm that. I am outlining book 3 of Mark of the Thief, and I'm ready to start writing it because I'm just about done with the outline, so that's an outline phase. I am editing book 2 of Mark of the Thief. I just finished proof pages for Night Divided. So I am at every stage in the process with one thing or another. And that allows me to kind of work on something and then change activities so I don't get bored with one. I spend probably of my total writing life 10% writing and 90% editing. Because I believe writing, that's just like creating the skeleton of the story. Editing is where I start to create art. And so I will go through it very, very, very often, because every draft I do makes that story better. So I'm 90% of my time editing. It's that important.
Hi, who do you consider your idol, and or who do you consider, like, who do you look up to in your everyday life?
It just as a, are you asking like writers I look up to or people I look up to?
Kind of both. Like, what kind of writer would you like? Who do you want to be like as a writer, or who do you just look up to in like every day?
Okay, and every day there's a lot of people I actually look up to and derive inspiration from. I mean, I have my religious influences, my personal influences, philosophical influences. I think my mom was a pretty amazing lady, because I look back at how hard my early life was and how great she was for us. Certainly that's important. Within writing specifically, though, I will tell you who I really admire is J.K. Rowling from Harry Potter, and for two reasons. Number one, because think about those late Harry Potter books, so starting about book 4, 5, and especially, and more with every book, she had the eyes of the entire world watching her. Like, if she sneezed into a napkin, there would be somebody to pull it out of the garbage and see if there was writing on it, you know? And I mean, it just, the scrutiny that woman was under, and through all of that scrutiny and all of these people dissecting every single word she said, she kept writing great books. And I think I love the class and how well she kept herself together with all of that pressure. I mean, it's worldwide attention, every word she wrote, and she was classy. And the second thing I loved is she was in an interview asked about, are you going to continue writing? And so she's finished Harry Potter. The woman is richer than the Queen of England, right? She could do anything that she wants, that she really wants to do now. She could do anything she wants. And she's asked, what are you going to do now that Harry Potter is over? And J.K. Rowling answered, I'm going to keep writing books, because she said, I'm still a writer. And I just think, oh, for all of that fame and success and money she earned, she's still a writer. That's what she really cared about. The rest of it was just cool stuff that happened to happen. And she's still writing today. And I absolutely respect that for her, it always comes back to the story.
My question is, why did you write Tobias as more educated and smart, while you wrote Rodin as more physically strong, yet Sage is sort of an average in between, but he sort of falls below because he doesn't try, he just doesn't really care. Why'd you write him that way?
Because he's a punk. So I start with Sage as my character, and then I've got to build the world around Sage. And the characters who come around him are, some of them are designed to help him, and some of them are designed to get in his way, because that's how we create interest in the story. Rodin and Tobias are designed to get into Sage's way, where, you know, you never know what exactly Connor is looking for. Is he looking for somebody who's super, super smart? Because maybe that's Tobias. Is he looking for somebody who might have had Prince Jaren's fighting skills? Because Rodin's closer to that. And then you've got Sage in the middle, who doesn't seem to be all, you know, quite as smart. He doesn't seem to be quite as strong. So he has to figure out, how is he going to win this contest if he's not the standout in either of those extremes? And so I designed them for Sage.
Okay, so have you read any novels in collaboration with another author? If not, would you like to, and who would it be?
Oh, what a cool question. No, I really haven't. And the thought of it, honestly, it makes me sort of nervous, because I'm a pretty controlling personality creatively. Like, because I'm building all this stuff in my head, it makes me nervous to share that with another author and to say, okay, are we building the same thing? And what if you write a chapter and I think it's awful? Or what if you think one of my chapters is awful? Like, that process makes me nervous. That said, I would in a heartbeat pick up, if I had the right author, I would love to pick up a story where we have 2 point of view characters and they're writing one character and I'm writing the other character, and we just alternate chapters and we move the story forward that way. I think that could be really, really fun and exciting. Who would I do that with? I would love to do that with maybe Shannon Hale, who did like Goose Girl and Book of 1,000 Days, just because she's so good at teen princesses. And I would love to write a teen prince or boy to work with her on that. So it would be great.
What do you think were some of the most important events during your career that got you to where you are now?
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Important career events. I think it was very fortunate, the agent that I have. She was her name is Joan. Joan was a new agent, and I think she was really hungry to do something big, to kind of prove herself in the industry. I think that was a really good thing for me, that I came in with Joan at that period in her career. I think going with Scholastic was a really good choice for me, because Scholastic has such an influential reach in the schools. That was really big. Scholastic gave False Prince was optioned for a movie very early on because of Scholastic, and so I think that was really big. One of my favorite things, though, was just total luck, really. One day in Twitter, R.L. Stine, who's the guy who wrote Goosebumps, somebody said to R.L. Stine, hey, you should read The False Prince, and he read it, and he loved it. He just geeked out about it. And all of a sudden, he's putting up on Twitter to like his 1 million followers or whatever, you guys should go read The False Prince. I think R.L. Stine kind of endorsing this book did huge things for kids to read it, because like if R.L. Stine tells me to jump off a cliff, I'm going to consider doing that because it's R.L. Stine. And so, but I wouldn't actually do it. Very dangerous. But you know, little things like that, I think, just kind of created this snowball for False Prince.
Okay, so Jennifer, we are running short on time here, and that's our bell. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the microphones for everyone to say goodbye. Do you have any parting advice for anyone who may want to be a writer or an author when they grow up?
Yeah. For quick parting advice here, and this is very, very important. You never, never, never give up. The people who succeed in this industry are not necessarily the best writers. They are the ones who never quit.
Okay, and with that, I would like to thank you on behalf of the St. Joseph students, Mr. Amato's class, Miss Ennett's class at Our Lady of Fatima and St. Agnes, respectively. Thank you for taking the time out to do this with us. This was very informative, very enlightening, very entertaining. We can't thank you enough. As a final note, as a final note, I know my guys are definitely looking forward to reading the rest of the Ascendance trilogy, and we hope that you keep writing because you're a marvelous writer.
If I wanted to. Thank you, Mr. Vadovic.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.